You're listening to Dear Strategy, where we answer all of your questions on product and business strategy. And now, here's your host, Bob Caporelli.
Welcome to another episode of Dear Strategy, where we answer all of your questions about product and business strategy. Real questions from real people in real companies, just like yours. So welcome back, strategy creators. We have a special treat in these next 3 episodes. As I have said before, I have a backlog of questions still to go that will easily take us through episode 100. So that's really good. But I've actually sorted through them as I normally do. And I found that there was at least 3 that were focused on career moves, right? So people that were looking at making some changes and wanted some advice on that. Indirectly related to strategy, but you'll see how I spin this when we get to them. So I'm going to do a little 3-part series here of kind of career moves and career strategy questions. So see how that plays out for the next 3 episodes or so. So before we get to the first part of that, I want to again put a shout out for the company that sponsors this program, Strategy Generation Company. Of course, I work for that company and also founded that company. We do strategy training and coaching for companies large and small. We have a series of strategy training programs that hopefully you'll be interested in taking advantage of. They're really targeted at product teams and marketing teams and business teams for medium-sized and large-sized companies. So if you have a product management team that you really want to get, moving on the subject of strategy, you want them to put together strategies for their lines. Maybe they don't have training in that. Maybe they're not doing that today. Bring us in and we can help them not only teach them the process, but also help them through the actual process of generating a strategy for their particular product line. So you have actionable strategies that you can go ahead and execute after the program is completed. So go out to strategygeneration.com, check us out, and let us know if you have any questions at all. So with that introduction, let's go ahead and get to today's question. Again, the first part in a 3-part series on career moves. And this question starts out, Dear Strategy, how do I evaluate product management jobs between large but worse performing products versus small but not yet proven products? So I love this question because it really gets to the heart of something that I think is actually a problem inside of companies, especially larger companies. And I'll kind of address that problem first, and then I'll address this question more directly. But the problem that I see, and I've again spent many, many years in the corporate world in all kinds of different positions, and I've seen this more times than I can ever tell you, is that many times you'll have business leaders that are judged solely on a number, right? Whether that number is revenue growth or profit growth or some combination of both. Usually it's some combination of both, but that's the only thing they're judged on. So if they have a business or a product line that is really, really doing well, right? From a sales and profit standpoint, they're going to be the hero. And if you have someone else who has maybe more of a challenged product line or a challenged business, so to speak, they are not going to be the hero, right? Particularly if that's been challenged for, some period of time. And a lot of times leaders and CEOs and managers and so forth will play those people off of one another, sometimes knowingly and sometimes kind of unknowingly. But what you're doing is you're creating a competition. And some people will say that that's a healthy competition, right? It drives each other. And I would say that there's probably some truth to that, but only if you're actually judging people, not just on a number, but on a number that they affected. So what do I mean by that? Well, I've seen so many people come into, businesses that are already very, very healthy. And they're healthy for any number of different reasons. Maybe they've been really well managed in the past, or more often than not, there's just a great product that's really resonated with the marketplace that no one else has been able to imitate, right? And so the product is growing, it's got great revenue, it's got great margin, it's really important to the business. Somebody comes into that role, and let's say it's a product manager, because that's where this question is being asked from. And that product manager is already the hero, right? And so they go into their monthly or quarterly or annual reviews, and they can do no wrong, as opposed to someone who has a product line that is struggling, right? Maybe it's struggling again for any number of different reasons. Maybe it's on the other side of its life cycle curve. Maybe there's been competitors that have come in. Maybe the product line has been ignored or mismanaged. And that person will be, looked at as a low performer sometimes, right? And so it really creates a bad dynamic. And outside of what CEOs see in the boardroom, where they might think it's healthy competition or maybe a couple of jabs being, thrown back and forth, what really happens when those people come out of the boardroom and they start doing their jobs is a lot of animosity, right? There's a lot of negative feelings. One person kind of struts around like they can do no wrong, and the other person is kind of firing arrows at that other one saying, that person has no reason to brag. They didn't have anything to do with the success of their product line, and so on down the road, right? And it really creates a bad dynamic. And I see it a lot, which is why I want to bring it up. Of course, the answer to that is for leaders, CEOs, if you're listening to this show, don't judge people just on their results. Judge people on the results that they affected. So it comes back to strategy, right? What was the strategy for your product line, and how did you execute that strategy to get the result that you got? And if all of that resulted in something really good, then you deserve all the accolades, you deserve all the praise, and no one's going to dispute that, right? But if you don't hold people accountable for that, right, then what's going to happen is people are going to say, well, they were just lucky and they don't deserve the praise. They don't deserve the pat on the back. Now move over to the low performing product line. The same thing applies, right? If somebody had a plan that they didn't execute or it was a bad plan and the results are not good, then yes, they need to be held accountable for that low performing line. But if they didn't have that kind of a dynamic, right? Maybe there were things that were outside of their control, or maybe they just got into a product line that isn't performing so well, then those people shouldn't be kind of, put out there as the poster child for bad product management or bad leadership, because, something was beyond their control. So again, what you should be doing is challenging people with what did you say you were going to do versus what happened? And the same thing going in the future. Tell me what your strategy is, right? So if you have a really good performing line, what's your strategy to keep it going that way? And then you have something to hold people accountable for in the future. If it's a low performing product line, what's your strategy to make it better? And then you have something to hold them accountable for. And when you manage a business like that, now what you're doing is you're giving credit where credit is due. And you're really encouraging people to be accountable for their products and put plans in place that will make sense. You also, as a leader, need to help people with that, right? Don't remove your own accountability and say, well, it's all your fault, but I have nothing to do with it. Well, last I checked, anybody who works for you, you're accountable for, you're responsible for their results as well. So give them a hand, give them some help, right? And that's where this whole strategy piece comes in. Have a plan and hold people accountable for the plan. Then you're not going to get any of these negative dynamics that happen. Okay, so now let's get to the question again, which is if you're on the product management side and you're trying to evaluate those jobs, what I would do before I took a job for a product line that is not yet proven or not performing very well or whatever else, I would look to see what the dynamics are in my company, right? If you're being interviewed for that position, ask them these specific questions like, what is your strategy process? And will you have a methodology that will allow me to put together a strategy, put together a plan, and be accountable for those results? How long will I have to be accountable for those results? How long, do you expect that I will have to turn the product line around? What's your expectations as a company for me to be able to turn the product line around? How do you manage product managers today? Are you managing them purely on results, or are you managing them on their strategies in combination with their results? These are all questions that you should be asking your management teams, right? And if you're interviewing for another company, ask them these specific questions. Basically, what you're trying to drive to is, are these companies strategic, right? Do they value a strategic process, or are they just results driven? Because if they're just results driven and they don't value strategy, then I think it's a big red flag to go into a company where the product line is performing low, because number one, you're probably not going to get the support that you need to turn it around. And number two, if you do turn it around, you might not get the credit that you deserve, right? Because they're not thinking strategically, they're just thinking about results. Whereas if you have a company that really values a strategic process, has an annual strategic process or an annual strategic planning process, and expects from you not just a turnaround of results, but a plan to turn around results, a strategy to do that, and we'll give you some time to execute on that strategy, well, then that's a challenge I think you should take. Now, you have to feel comfortable that you're a good strategist as well. And if you don't feel like that's in your skill set or that's in your strength, then yeah, that's going to be a flag for you as well. But of course, listening to programs like this, taking advantage of some of the resources that we can provide to you, anybody could be a strategist. So I wouldn't let that scare me personally, but that's something you have to think about yourself as well. So hopefully that's a helpful answer. Again, there's a cultural part of it for companies, right? That they really need to be more strategic. But if you're evaluating a position of between a really strong product line that you're in today or a really weak product line that you might be thinking about going into, make sure that the company thinks strategically, values strategy, and ask them what their expectations are so that you'll have an opportunity to be judged on actually turning that product line around. So hopefully that's helpful to everyone out there. If you have a question that you want to be featured on the show, please hit us up on our website, dearstrategy.com or dearstrategy.net. Both of them work. You can go into the upper right-hand corner and there is a Ask a Question link. Go ahead and click on that and you'll be able to ask a question to be featured on the show. Also, please subscribe, please tell your friends, and please visit our sponsor, Strategy Generation Company, at strategygeneration.com, and you'll be able to get filled with resources to make you a better strategist at any point in your career. So tune in next week for part 2 of our career series. In the meantime, don't forget to make time for the plan. We'll see you back here on another episode of Dear Strategy. Thanks for joining.
Thank you for listening to Dear Strategy with Bob Caparelli. To learn more or to submit a question to be featured on our show, please visit us at dearstrategy.net.